Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you some articles out of History magazine. They started printing this magazine on this new sleek paper, which I actually really like, but my light apparently doesn't. On this very dark page is creating some really strange effects that I can't make go away. So it's only on this page. But it's kind of neat. It's kind of fun to play with and kind of leads to the ambiance of tonight's theme, which is sunken cities. We're going to read this article about cities that are underneath mostly the Mediterranean Sea and a city under the Black Sea. And then I also have this article here about a town in ancient England that collapsed into a river. So technically also a sunken city in a way. I chose this article to read you tonight because it was heavily requested by my channel members. It was requested by 752 Racing, Nebulous Wisp, All the Happy Squirrels, Jill Tunes, Robot Canary, and Crystal. Thank you so much for requesting. Again, like the last video we did, not the last video, I guess, but the one before about Roman magic was so super requested. And now this one is like just as requested. And I get it because it's a fascinating topic. Look at this picture here where they're excavating this old Egyptian statue. How neat is that? So let's get into this first article here. Let's read it all the way through and then we'll look at all the pictures. Lost cities sunken beneath the waves are not just myths. Many coastal communities were swallowed up by the sea in the ancient world. Their streets, homes, and temples all submerged under relentless tides. For millennia, legends swirled about these places, but their submarine statues made them impossible to explore in the field. Starting in the 20th century, breakthroughs in oceanography and marine science opened the door to underwater archaeology, allowing scholars to map sites, collect artifacts, and resurface the stories of these drowned cities. Some of humanity's earliest coastal settlements met their fate because of climate change. Using geomorphological, sedimentological, and paleontological data from the seabed, scientists have established that between 30,000 and 20,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum, sea level was some 425 feet lower than it is today. Wow. At the end of this period, the sea level rose abruptly as polar ice caps melted. Many prehistoric settlements built along the coastlines flooded and were abandoned. The Submerged Prehistoric Archaeology and Landscapes of the Continental Shelf Project has recently counted 2,600 such submerged sites in 19 countries, including the Coquer Cave in Marseille, France, famous for its paintings. The entrance to the cave lies about 100 feet deep. So fascinating. On shaky ground. People may call Earth terra firma, but nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, the planet is undergoing a continuous process of geological shifting, a constant transformation brought about by natural destruction and regeneration. As the tectonic plates move, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and other seismic phenomena can cause the so-called solid ground to shake, crumble, liquefy, or even fall into the sea. Throughout history, this geological shape-shifting has taken whole coastal cities with it, leaving their human-built infrastructure submerged. In the past, people looked for religious explanations, usually as some sort of divine punishment. From the Epic of Gilgamesh to Noah's Ark, stories from many civilizations feature a great flood set loose by a powerful deity. Today, people look to science for explanations behind these natural events that left whole cities underwater. Seismic activity has repeatedly led to the disappearance of coastal areas and entire cities. Violent earthquakes or resulting tsunamis can wipe an entire city off the face of the earth, as happened to the Greek city of Helike in 373 BCE. More than 7 centuries later, an earthquake with its epicenter in Crete, believed to be the largest earthquake ever recorded in the Mediterranean, had an enormous impact on coastal populations in 365 CE. The quake's magnitude is estimated to have been 8.3, and it generated numerous tsunamis across the Mediterranean, devastating port cities like Alexandria in Egypt and Apollonia in modern Libya. More common than these dramatic earth-shaking episodes is subsidence, the progressive sinking of the Earth's crust as a result of continuous seismic or volcanic activity over time. Subsidence allows the sea to advance inland until it eventually swallows up any buildings or settlements in its way. Throughout history, these natural processes have affected many coastal populations, causing them to disappear either completely or in part. Because their ruins are underwater, archaeologists had not been able to study them in depth until the last century. The Mediterranean basin, including the Black Sea, contains numerous sites beneath its waves. These sunken sites are now the hunting grounds for today's underwater archaeologists using the latest technologies: sonar, robotics, 3D scanning, and underwater cameras. This article presents 5 submerged cities from the ancient world that are being brought to light. We are starting tonight in Pavlopetri, the oldest sunken city. Located in the southern Peloponnesian Peninsula, Pavlopetri, the modern name of the site, emerged as a Neolithic settlement around 3500 BCE and became an important trading center for Mycenaean Greece. This area of the Aegean Sea is prone to earthquakes and tsunamis, which caused the city to gradually sink. The buildings closest to the coast were battered by sea storms and tsunamis, and the slow sea level rise in the Mediterranean submerged the city more than 3,000 years ago. For millennia, the city's remains lay unseen below some 13 feet of water. They were covered by a thick layer of sand off the island of Laconia. In recent decades, shifting currents and climate change have eroded a natural barrier that protected Pavlopetri. In 1967, a scientific survey of the Peloponnesian coast was gathering data to analyze changes in sea levels when British oceanographer Nicholas Fleming first spotted the submerged structures. A year later, he returned with a few students to examine the location and map the site. The team identified some 15 buildings, courtyards, a network of streets, and 2 chamber tombs. Despite the exciting initial finds, the site would lie undisturbed for decades before archaeologists would return. In 2009, archaeologists Chrysanthi Galou and John Henderson resumed the excavation of Pavlopetri in cooperation with the Greek Ministry of Culture. Since the 1960s, underwater archaeology techniques and tools have made huge advances. The team employed robotics, sonar mapping, and state-of-the-art graphics to survey the site. From 2009 to 2013, they were able to bring the underwater town to light. Covering about 2.5 acres, Pavlopetri's 3 main roads connected some 50 rectangular buildings, all of which had open courtyards. Excavations revealed a large number of Minoan-style loom weights, suggesting Pavlopetri was a thriving trade center with a robust textile industry. Now here in this picture, they've outlined what the city looks like under the water. They've obviously highlighted it themselves. So you can really see the roads there and the various buildings. Isn't that neat? Over here we can see, let's see, it says to the right. Oh, it's just two pictures of the area. Of what Pavlopetri looks like today. This old city from long, long, long ago, submerged under the Mediterranean. This says, imagining ancient Pavlopetri. Pavlopetri lies under some 13 feet of water, complicating excavations. Limited visibility and variable conditions caused archaeologists to turn to technology in 2009 when they returned to the site. A prototype autonomous robot equipped with GPS and 2 separate cameras was used to observe the ruins. Structures could be photographed from 2 different angles. Taking 3 snapshots per second, it generated thousands of high-resolution stereoscopic photographs. When they were digitally assembled, an accurate picture of the whole location was revealed. With the guidance from the archaeologists, visual effects technicians used the images to recreate what Pavlopetri may have looked like during its heyday as a trading hub in the Mediterranean. So there's a little workup today of what it looked like along the seacoast. Here's what this location looks like today under the water. And here we have some imaging of building it back up, building it up, and then what this building here would have most likely looked like when it was above the sea. A 2-story building. Next we're going to Phanagoria, beneath the Black Sea. Let me like this because the article's way in the corner here. Phanagoria. Around 540 BCE, Ionian Greeks fleeing from the Persian Empire founded a city on the shores of the Black Sea on the Taman Peninsula near the modern Russian city of Krasnodar. It was called Phanagoria after one of the settlers, and the city grew wealthy and prosperous from the maritime trade that flowed through it. In the 4th century BCE, it became part of the Bosporan Kingdom, a Greco-Scythian state that ruled much of the surrounding territory. Phanagoria gained prestige and eventually became the kingdom's eastern capital. The area came under Roman control, but Phanagoria continued to prosper. Look at this little statue. A little god, I assume. Yeah, a deity. During the 1st millennium CE, Phanagoria's fortunes began to shift. Significant seismic activity in the area and volcanic eruptions of mud caused the seabed and the land under the city itself to weaken and sink. Part of the city was flooded as waters from the Black Sea swept in. What remained of the city was battered by invasions, and its importance in the region began to fade. Phanagoria's ruins were identified in the 1800s, but only areas on dry land could be explored. Then in the 1950s, breakthroughs in underwater technology helped confirm that roughly 60 unexplored acres of the ancient city were underwater. As technology has improved, so have the findings at Phanagoria. In 2004, the remains of a large coastal structure, perhaps a lighthouse or watchtower, were found and dated to the 3rd and 4th centuries CE. In 2012, archaeologists were able to identify part of the city's port. They also discovered a small 1st century BCE warship, still in an excellent state of preservation. Let's see, here's a high-up shot of the teams, I guess their little station here, exploring under the water. And you can see some of what they found. This little statue head. Another big, it looks like the bottom of a column. Oh, it's a tombstone. Oh, how interesting. They found a tombstone of a princess. My goodness. And you can see a diver here analyzing the stones here. Thonis, Heraklion, and Canopus. Trying to get this with the light. My lights really don't like this paper. Egypt's lost seaports. Two of ancient Egypt's most important ports were drowned by the waters of Aboukir Bay some 1,200 years ago. Scholars believe that both Thonis Heraklion and Canopus, located in the Nile Delta, fell victim to a combination of rising sea levels and chronic seismic activity that led to the liquefaction of the ground beneath them. Thonis Heraklion was one of Egypt's most important port cities. It was a trading hub and a gateway for goods from all over the Mediterranean. Documented since the 8th century BCE, Thonis Heraklion went into decline as Alexandria rose to importance in 331 BCE. In 2000, underwater archaeologist Franck Godiot and the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology located its ruins, including the famous temple of Amen-Gerib, with its outer walls and 3 colossal statues standing over 16 feet high at its entrance. More than 2 decades of archaeological research there have revealed many of the city's secrets. Navigable canals, minor temples, the remains of numerous vessels, and hundreds of stone anchors confirm that this port was once a busy trading center for Greek merchants. Canopus was an important spiritual center in Ptolemaic Egypt and home to a monumental temple for Serapis, a syncretic deity who blended traits from Greek and Egyptian gods. The city attracted pilgrims from all over the ancient world who came to Canopus to worship at the temple. In 1933, Egyptian scholar Prince Omar Toussoun conducted the first archaeological study of the site, thanks to indications from fishermen and an English aviator. In 1999, Godiot's team, who had been surveying the waters of Aboukir Bay, located the site and were able to confirm its identity as the lost city of Canopus. Let's see, the divers here are looking at this amazing column here. Look at that. All the details that are still preserved. That's so fascinating. Golden treasures of the Delta. Goodness. Archaeologists were surprised by the large amounts of gold found at Thonis Heraklion and Canopus. The abundance of coins, jewelry, and gifts to the gods revealed how wealthy these cities were before they sank. Here we go, I guess. Let me do this again. This seems to work. Sunken treasure is typically found in fiction, but gold was found in abundance at both Thonis Heraklion and Canopus. Its presence points to the religious significance of the cities. Gold was often employed as votive offerings to the gods. In Thonis Heraklion, many of these were found near the Amen-Gerib temple, where every year the god Osiris was brought to a sanctuary in Canopus. This annual rite spiritually linked the two cities. These golden artifacts also provide valuable information to help archaeologists date sites. A golden plaque from Thonis Heraklion was found with an ancient Greek inscription that says, King Ptolemy, son of Ptolemy and Arsinoe, the sibling gods, gives this gymnasterium to Heracles. This plaque commemorated a gymnasium dedicated to the god Heracles that was built during the reign of Ptolemy III. The gym is long gone, but the golden message remains as a valuable archaeological clue. You can see it right here. Look at that, how fascinating. Can you see that? It looks like Greek right there. Like pounded in. Fascinating. Following the money is vital when studying sites like Thonis Heracleion and Canopus, as gold and silver coins give insight into trade and occupation patterns. Coinage found at Thonis Heracleion dates across a period of 1,200 years, from the time of Alexander the Great through the Roman era and into the Byzantine period. Examining distribution patterns over time has revealed insights into when the city began to decline. Lower concentrations of coins often indicate decreased economic activity, and the data from Thonis Heracleion reveals such an event happened around the 160s BCE. The city never fully recovered. You can see all the coins here in this picture, buried in the floor of the water there. A beautiful Eye of Horus. It's almost like something that would be made today to kind of copy Egyptian art. It's so detailed and perfect. And look at this. It's a oil lamp. Where you put the oil, I suppose, where you light the flame. Look at this is the last one. Epidaurus, home by the sea. Known worldwide for its magnificent theater, the Greek city of Epidaurus was one of the most important trading ports of the Argolid Peninsula. In Roman times, various maritime villas were built along the coast here, taking advantage of the fertile land and easy access to the sea. Located outside the cities, these estates were dedicated to agriculture and the production of wine, oil, and garum, the fish sauce so highly prized by the Romans. The residents were hard-working, but their estates had a comfortable, even luxurious domestic area that included baths and places for entertaining and recreation. In the 5th century CE, a little more than a century after its construction, one of these villas was flooded by waters from the Bay of Agios Vlasios, after greater than normal seismic activity in the area and a general rise in sea level. In 1967, oceanographer Nicholas Fleming documented several submerged structures in the Bay of Agios Vlasios. In 1971, the archaeologist Charalambos B. Kritsos identified what was known to the locals as the submerged city, which has turned out to be the remnants of the coastal Roman villa. Sitting just 150 feet from the coast and only at 6.5 feet deep, the villa's ruins consist of 3 spaces. One of them was a large storeroom and contains pieces of some 20 dolia, huge clay containers that were used to store and sometimes ferment large quantities of wine. Another space seems to have housed a wine press, and a third space may have been the baths. So here you can see below the waters there. It looks like you could just reach out and touch it. It doesn't look very deep, but I bet it is. Make sure that was the end. Okay. Very fascinating. That would be something to, like if you had a glass bottom boat and saw that, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? But let's move on to our last article, completely different, but along the same vein. Must farm, the Bronze Age time capsule. It may have been a summer's day in the 9th century BCE when a fire erupted in a dwelling in what is now eastern England. Raised on wooden stakes over a wide, sluggish stream, the small houses alongside it were soon engulfed in flames. Residents had little chance to salvage their belongings. Burning roofs collapsed into the cottages, which in turn collapsed into the murky waters below, together with all their contents. The flames were extinguished, the debris sank deep into the mud, and the charred remains of tools, animal bones, food, textiles, and timbers were encased in the fluvial silt of East Anglia for nearly 3,000 years. This 9th century BCE catastrophe turned into a 20th century CE blessing when archaeologists found the remains of this community at a place called Must Farm. These are the best preserved prehistoric domestic structures found in the United Kingdom. Excavations at this site have given historians an unprecedented window into everyday life in late Bronze Age England that otherwise might have been lost to time. Raised up. Must Farm is located north of Cambridge in a huge area of marshland called the Fens. Over centuries, settlers have drained the marshes to create rich farmland. Thick layers of clay in the ground, which were quarried for brick-making, are among the area's abundant local resources. In 1999, during a visit to a disused clay quarry at Whittlesea, local archaeologist Martin Redding spotted what seemed to be the remains of wooden posts at Must Farm. Redding immediately suspected they might have historical value. After discovering the posts, Redding found shards of pots in subsequent visits. To protect the site in 2004, the Cambridge Archaeological Unit undertook an initial survey at Must Farm. Their work identified a dozen wooden piles sunk near what had once been a wide stream, long since silted up. Analysts of the piles dated them to the late Bronze Age, between the 11th and 9th centuries BCE. 2 years later, in 2006, excavation revealed wooden piles were part of a palisade that had encircled a cluster of pile dwellings placed over the watercourse. Nearby, archaeologists also found remains of an elevated causeway built of large oak slats. Dated between 1290 and 1250 BCE, it significantly predates the pile dwellings. Residents probably saw the causeway as a waterlogged ruin from a previous age. However, the most exciting discovery at the site was a rich layer filled with artifacts and objects from the pile dwellings. Hold on. I gotta skip past this picture. I'll show you at the end of the article. There we go. From the overall compactness of the layer, a 2006 survey established that this material ended up close together as the result of a fire. Human remains were found later. It is likely that these were not victims of the blaze, but venerated ancestors. This jumble of household items, tools, food, bones, and trash had been waterlogged for nearly 3 millennia in alkaline silt, ideal conditions for their preservation. In 2015, archaeologists were finally able to carry out an intensive excavation and reveal the secrets of the miraculously preserved objects. Funded by Historic England, a team of archaeologists led by Mark Knight excavated the site completely and documented their findings. One by one, the objects were extracted and documented. The report, co-authored by Knight, details finding more than 180 textiles, 160 wooden artifacts, including bobbins, containers, withies, which are cords made from willow twigs, furniture, and cartwheels, 120 pottery vessels, 90 pieces of metalwork, and dozens of glass beads. Using photogrammetry, Knight's team created 3D digital models revealing how the raised dwellings had been constructed. The platform dwellings were surrounded by a palisade of ash posts. Gangways facilitated movement between dwellings. Life on the Fens. Despite damage inflicted from clay quarrying in the 1960s, archaeologists have still been able to construct a good picture of the settlement at Must Farm when it was briefly inhabited in the 800s BCE. Must Farm was not an isolated village. It was part of a larger network of fen dwellers, for whom the water was not a barrier, but a way to exchange and share ritual activities. Other settlements and structures have been found in the Fens. Archaeologists revealed evidence of intense Bronze Age activity at a site just north of Must Farm called Flag Fen. Located on a much older Neolithic trackway, Flag Fen consists of a causeway raised above the marsh. Constructed between the 14th and 10th centuries BCE. The causeway rested on huge oak piles brought in from outside the area. Around the site were items of value that may have been placed in the waters as part of religious rituals. Preserved organic materials at Must Farm also revealed the complexity of the residents' diets. Analysis of the charred remains of grain suggests that wheat, barley, and flax were growing in the same place. The community had access to a varied local cereal diet. While it might seem obvious that fish and aquatic birds were on the menu, a surprising number of boar bones were also found at the site. Residents perhaps had connections with and access to relatively distant food sources of wild woodland animals. The presence of charred sheep and goat dung pellets also strongly suggests that people had access to livestock and their young. These animals may have been housed in the dwellings above the water. Remains of lambs and kids were found among the charred ruins. Analysis shows they died sometime between 3 and 6 months of age. If they died in the fire, this pinpoints the timing of the destruction to the summer months. Study of the timbers used to build the structures shows that they were felled not long before the fire struck. Given that the homes were built with such fresh materials, the settlement had to be very young. Perhaps it had only been completed a few months before the destruction. That's so sad. A wetter world. Since the discovery of Flag Fen, the Must Farm dwellings, and other infrastructure in the fens, the flat, rain-sodden farmland of East Anglia has become an area of intense interest for archaeologists, for its window into not only the everyday lives of its residents, but also broader changes in the area. That sentence is really long. Research has shown life in the fens was not always sodden. Earlier in the Bronze Age, communities had relied on herding domestic cattle. Then, about a millennium before Must Farm was built, water levels started to rise in this part of England. Communities rapidly adapted, raising up their homes and building boats and causeways. Dating across 6 centuries, 9 wooden boats were discovered along the Must Farm watercourse. The site was clearly at the center of a vibrant Bronze Age community made of settlements, connected by canals and causeways. Archaeologists are eager to learn even more from this preserved snapshot of a sunken past. Let's see some of the artifacts they found. There's a beautiful pot here. Some weapons. We've got a spearhead and a knife blade. A ring, it said, was probably attached to a cauldron. That's what it looks like, isn't it? Some glass beads and a sickle made out of bronze. We've got a little depiction of what their houses would have looked like. And we have, this page is so stubborn, this beautiful diagram here of what the Must Farm settlement would have looked like before it burned down. And it's really remarkable, isn't it? You can see the little entrance here, over the reed beds here. The long little palisade they're talking about encircling the whole area. It's all fenced in. And all the little homes here. You can see there were just one big room with a fire pit in the middle and a hole at the top to let the smoke out. It looks like the sleeping areas here. And then we have the excavations here in the mud. You can see the piles sticking up. And down here is one of the boats that was found in the area. So that is all that I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you to my channel members who picked this topic. It really is quite interesting. And if you want to pick topics someday, you too can join my channel memberships. The join button's actually down here now. It used to be over here. It's down here now. You can click the join button for only 99 cents a month. Become a channel member, get all kinds of perks. I have lots of plans for my channel members coming up, lots of exclusive videos, including one up now where I toured a Manhattan Project nuclear reactor. That was the best day. It was my birthday present to me to go there. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.